How?
What?
I don't get it. I asked for a few recipes I could make for the kids, and in like 5 minutes you wrote 10 new recipes?
Do you not trust them?
No, it's not that. They all sound delicious. Apple and juniper muffins, toasted rye biscuits, cinnamon roll crepes. But how do you know that they'll work? How did you write out all the measurements?
It's top secret.
No, you're just being a jerk.
All chefs are given a secret decoder ring. I can share mine with you.
That's your wedding band. Whatever. I don't even want to know anymore. You're probably filming this for your stupid cooking show anyway.
Okay. Wait. It's because of FLEB.
FLEB? FLEB.
FLEB.
Enough! This is getting annoying.
All right, kids, that's enough. It is getting annoying. But at least no one will forget FLEB. FLEB is F-L-E-B. It stands for flour, liquid, egg, butter. These are the essential ingredients to a plethora of common household eats. Knowing quantities and the methods of incorporating and cooking them yield infinite variations. I'll be giving you the code for the breakfast rivals, pancakes and waffles. But before we can crack that code, we need to understand the properties of each of FLEB's ingredients. Let's start with flour. Just about every kitchen in America is stocked with all-purpose flour. It's called all-purpose because, well, it really is. It is made from a blend of both hard and soft wheats and is milled from just the endosperm. If we were to reach for a flour that was just hard wheat, we'd get bread flour. It has a much higher concentration of gluten than good old AP flour, which means we can get chewier textures and better browning. If you wanted to go the other direction for a lighter, fluffier consistency, we would go for soft wheat in the form of cake flour. Whole wheat flour is comparable to all-purpose flour, only it is made from red wheat berries and is ground whole. It has more flavor than the other flour options, but it does spoil relatively quickly and is a lot denser. Then there is semolina flour. This comes from a hard durum wheat and is extremely high in gluten. It is mostly used in pasta, but can be used to make some delectably toothy goodies as well. There are even more wheat flours out there, but let's move on to some non-wheat considerations. Almond flour is one of my favorites. It tends to be dense in baked goods, but it is gluten-free and has a glycemic index of less than 1. But that doesn't mean it is only good as a healthy substitute. It has a wonderful nutty flavor and it browns quickly. Rice flour doesn't impart much flavor or take on much color, but it creates a very tender texture. Oat flour, which can be made by blitzing rolled oats in a blender or food processor, has a nice earthiness to it, although it can have a drier mouthfeel. Corn flour can also easily be made at home, just like the oat flour, from cornmeal. It has a, corniness to it that pairs equally well with both sweet and savory flavors. Last flour to take a spin on Susie Q here is peanut flour. It is often sold as peanut butter powder. This stuff has gotten really popular in recent years. It is made by roasting and grinding peanuts, then pressing and separating the fat out, much like how cocoa powder is made, which should be treated as a flour in your ratio when using it in your FLEB recipe. These flours can be used in different blends with one another. Just consider what your goal is for texture and flavor, then play with the ratios until you get the desired effect. Liquid is a pretty broad classification for an ingredient, and that is okay. There are just a few characteristics that you need to consider when selecting a liquid. Once you know what you're looking for, liquid is one of the best ways to begin injecting some creativity into your recipe. Those characteristics are flavor, consistency, sugar content, and pH. Flavor is self-explanatory, so let's start with consistency. Generally, you want a liquid whose viscosity ranges between that of water and cultured buttermilk. If what you want to use is too thick, thin it out a bit. If we wanted to use, say, Greek yogurt in a recipe, we could certainly do just that, but since it is so thick, we could dilute it with plain water. Too often people think that when a liquid is called for, they need to find the most flavorful liquid possible, but that is just not always the case.
FLEB.
Shoo! When it comes to sugar content, besides flavor, sugar will affect browning. If you feel you need some more sweetness and browning, you can always add some even in savory applications.
Wait a minute, Chef. Sweetness means sugar, and you didn't include that in FLEB. Should it be FLEBs?
Well, if you're using granular sugar, it won't really throw off the ratio. There is no golden brown and delicious rule that I am aware of when it comes to how much you should use. Just add it to taste and see how your recipe turns out. If, however, you are using a liquid sweetener, You would want to include that in your liquid measurement. Now, before I get into pH, we need to take a slight detour to talk about leavening. Most quick breads like pancakes and waffles we'll be making get their lift in the form of either baking soda or baking powder. Kid, get back here and do science.
Baking soda is sodium bicarbonate. When added to water, nothing happens. Since sodium bicarbonate is basic, it needs an acid to react with. Baking powder is sodium bicarbonate with an acid like monocalcium phosphate for it to react with, plus sodium aluminum phosphate, which creates its bubbles in the presence of heat. If we go back to the baking soda and add vinegar for our acid, we get the same reaction. If we heat up the one with baking powder, we get bubbles again.
Alright, get out of here. That's enough trying to show me up. So if you're choosing an acidic liquid like juice or buttermilk, you can get by with just baking soda. If you're using more basic liquid, reach for baking powder. Since essentially all baking powder gets extra lift in the presence of heat, I tend to like baking powder in most applications. A good reliable ratio is 1 teaspoon for every 4 ounces of flour. This is the same ratio for self-rising flour, although you would typically add a half teaspoon of salt to that mixture too. But our next ingredient can provide some lift as well. An egg's primary purpose is to hold everything together. Their protein-rich structures bind and coagulate when cooked. You can use whole eggs or separated. If using egg whites alone or in a higher concentration than the yolks, you'll want to whip them with a bit of sugar and some acid like lemon juice or cream of tartar. It helps denature the proteins for better aeration. You'll get a fluffier end product with whipped egg whites, but if you were to choose to go all white with no whip, you'll get a weird sulfury, eggy flavor. If you want to opt for a denser, more custardy flavor and texture, you could go with more egg yolk than whites. And lastly, we have butter. You could technically use other fats, but in most cases, I like butter, and it works better in our acronym FLEB.
FLEB.
No more. Butter, or any other fat for that matter, acts as a tenderizer. It shortens the starch change in our flour, which is why we have the food product shortening. If you really wanted to try something other than butter, coconut oil, bacon fat, and lard are tasty options, but nut butters can also work.
Can I have the secret code for pancakes and waffles now?
Where did your mother go?
She got tired of waiting and so she left.
Oh, okay then. Well, since you stayed and pancakes and waffles are easy enough for someone your age to make, I guess you'll be my helper. Here's the secret code for pancakes. 4, 4, 2, 1.
Oh, I get it. 4 flour, 4 liquid, 2 egg, and 1 butter. I don't get it.
It's a ratio. It means in order to make pancakes, we need by weight 4 parts flour, 4 parts liquid, 2 parts egg, and 1 part butter. Using that ratio,
How come that happens whenever you say that word?
it's a feature that came with the house, kind of like the voice-activated bidet. Anyway, this is why you need a kitchen scale. It is easier than working with a bunch of measuring cups, and it is far more reliable. It is also easier to scale up recipes when measuring by weight.
Why?
Well, if you scoop a cup of flour and weigh it, and scoop another cup of flour and weigh that, you'd likely have 2 slightly different weights. For a small batch of something, that might be fine. But when you try to multiply a recipe to make a big batch with like 10 cups, those little differences could really add up and ruin the batch. Now, let's make some breakfast. The simplest way to interpret the ratio is in ounces. Doubling the code works great for a couple servings of pancakes. I'll go with cake flour, 8 ounces. The liquid is going to be milk, also 8 ounces. Eggs weigh about 2 ounces, but I'm going to go with yolks only, which weigh just over half an ounce. So I'll go with 7 to get as close to 4 ounces as I can. Then for the butter, 2 ounces. For batters like pancakes and waffles, you want to melt and cool the butter. Since the milk isn't very acidic and egg yolks make for a denser texture, I want to go with baking powder to get as much lift as possible. 2 teaspoons will do the trick. A pinch of salt will help with flavor too. Now we mix thoroughly for 15 seconds. And stop. Lumps are okay. They'll hydrate as we let this sit for 5 minutes. We don't want to overwork the mixture and have our pancakes be tough. This gives us time to mix up another component for our dish. We need a can each of sweetened condensed milk and evaporated milk, along with 8 ounces cream and a splash of vanilla extract. We'll set that aside for now and heat up the griddle.
I think I've seen something like this before.
We'll heat our griddle to 375 degrees. When using a griddle over 2 burners, an infrared thermometer really comes in handy. When our pancake batter has finished its 5-minute rest, we can spray some nonstick spray down and dish up the batter. This is easiest done with, well, a disher. For these pancakes, I'm going with the number 10 disher. Dishers are, for the most part, standardized when it comes to color and volume. The number that you can usually find on the swooshy food scraper thing or the handle refers to the number of scoops to reach 1 quart. When making pancakes, watch the bubbles that form. Once those bubbles pop, leaving little holes behind, you know you're ready to flip. Once golden brown on the other side, transfer it to a sheet pan fitted with a cooling rack to prevent sweating. If you aren't quite ready to serve them, cover loosely with foil and put into a 200-degree oven. If you've been wondering the point of going all yolk in these pancakes, your patience is about to be rewarded because this is where we really stray away from the conventional pancake. We are going to take our previously perforated pancakes and place them into a 6-inch cake round, pour a bit of our milk mixture from earlier over, let it soak in, and invert onto a plate. That's right, I made pancakes into tres leches. I call them pancakes tres leches. Now, are you ready to see what I have planned for waffles? Now that you know the power of FLEB, the code for waffles is 4831. Once again, I'm going to double the coded numbers and treat that as ounces to get our recipe. For these, I'm going to use 2 different flours, 4 ounces of AP flour and 4 ounces peanut flour to get our 8 ounces total. Intrigued? You should be. I want some extra sweetness in these, so I'll add a glug of real maple syrup. Since maple syrup is mostly water, I'm going to need to measure how much I use. There we go. About 3 ounces should do it. That means we need another 13 ounces of liquid to get our needed 16. We'll get that from room temperature almond milk, although you could go with peanut milk if you feel inclined to make some. To get 6 ounces eggs, we need 3 total. For the butter, I'll be using peanut butter. Since it contains both fats and solids, I'll go a little over 2 ounces. Heat it to thin it out. Same as with the pancakes, 2 teaspoons of baking powder and a pinch of salt. Mixing is also the same procedure with a 5-minute rest, but now it is time to heat up the iron. I don't like Belgian waffle irons. In fact, I have some very strong opinions on Belgian waffles, but that's another episode entirely. Each waffle iron model is too different to really recommend a particular setting, but what I can say once again is that a disher makes dosing out reliable portions a breeze. I'll link a set in the description that comes with every size you'd likely ever need. Since the indicator light only tells us when the iron reaches the target temperature for its setting, I'm going to ignore it once the batter goes in, as these will take longer than 1 cycle. You can smell the peanuts. Peanut butter waffles and jam, a schoolboy's dream brunch.
Thank you. I will take that.
You can't come back now and just steal my creations. You didn't even bother to stay and learn about the secret codes.
I didn't want you to teach me. I just want you to make some food, give me some recipes. You could have just said you memorized some ratios in the first place. Do all recipes just fit into those same ratios then?
Well, no, not really. If you were to compare a small sample size, you'd find them to be quite different actually. But if you were to take enough recipes and average out the amounts, you'd find all of them to be pretty darn close to these ratios. People are going to deviate naturally and stick with what they find works for them and suits their taste. If you want to create your very own recipe, however, you need to know the properties of the ingredients you want to work with and have a basic outline to work off of. Play around, make something new.
Chef, Mom left again.
She took the pancakes tres leches too.
So are you Team Pancake or Team Waffle? Or, now that you know the secret to creating your own recipes, do you think you might switch teams? Let me know in the comments along with some ideas you'd like to try. If one stands out, Chef might even make them and feature your name in a short video. And as always, like, subscribe, and share this video with someone you know who wants to be more competent in the kitchen.